Hey everyone, welcome back to another Citrus Corner. We got a lot to talk about in the state of Florida. The good, the bad, and the possibly ugly coming at you. And we are back with another Citrus Corner, folks. Of course, I got my two very good friends, my brothers from another mother's. We have the host of Freshly Squeezed, Mr. VashSky. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing pretty good. I want to apologize in advance. Oh, wait. Maybe I have the actual drop right here. Here we go.
We've made mistakes. I have made mistakes, but we own them.
Yeah, exactly. And
I got to own that. And so I want to apologize to you.
I want to apologize to you, our audience, for this little low-end rumble that I have going on right now. We're doing construction next door, or at least somebody is, and it might be interfering with the mic, so I do apologize in advance for that. But I am so glad to be here. I've been wanting to crack into the show for a while, ever since George actually brought up the topic. So I am, I'm excited. I'm excited to get into it. You can find me at VashSky. That's right down there, just like it's spelled. And to see me, well, it's on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. So that is where you can find me. Here we go. Right there.
Time to grow up.
There you go.
Yes. That's awesome.
Love our governor.
And mentioning about the construction, that if we were to ever hear it in the background, just let them know to head down to Florida, because they could desperately need some help with Tron, with the progression of that. So
absolutely, I will go ahead and give them the referral.
Good.
Absolutely.
And of course, Citrus Corner and Freshly Squeezed wouldn't have even existed without this guy up here to the top left, Mr. Orange Grove 55. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, George. It's fantastic being on another episode of Citrus Corner, talking some Walt Disney World. We're going to get into Imagineering. A lot of great stuff today. I'm super excited. Thank you for having me on, brother.
Time to grow up.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Love it.
So I thought today we have two very different topics, as Orange Grove had mentioned. So we're going to start with kind of a positive one before we get into that deep, hardcore, juicy Disney news that this channel is known for. So let's start off light, and then we'll move into the hardcore stuff. So this topic actually came about a couple weeks ago, and this is actually from someone who I follow on Twitter and most recently followed me back. And it's from Disney Space at DisneySpace Pod on Twitter. And they are heavily into sort of a kind of like a what if scenario of if there's any extra land or space in Walt Disney World for future expansions or what have you. And the most recent one that they've been focusing on is Disney's Hollywood Studios. And I thought that was kind of interesting because I have been talking to you guys a lot about Disney's Hollywood Studios and how out of the 4 parks at Walt Disney World, this one is kind of landlocked, where too much expansion can't really happen. So if you want to bring up the map, I could actually show you guys what I'm talking about. So with Hollywood Studios, this is the area that they were figuring out that this is the biggest chunk of land that could potentially have for an expansion. And there was some debate on Twitter about whether or not it can actually happen, because this particular map is from the Disney app. And what the Disney app does is it just showcases where the guests can locate in the park. It doesn't show you the behind the scenes, the backstage area. So the next photo is from Google Earth, which is an actual replica of what it looks like if you were looking at it from a higher point looking down. And this back part, right where the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror area is, that whole back part where that empty little patch is basically all that's left. And that back part area by World Drive, that's the backstage area for the cast members. So I thought it would be a great kind of topic to discuss that for future expansion. Could it be possible in that area to maneuver stuff around? And if that is, what would you fellas put in there? So I thought we could kind of start off there.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to say the DisneySpace Podcast that you are referencing, I was actually on their channel a few months ago, and they are phenomenal. I love their work. They are great guys. 6 Miles and Walt Disney World Scope, I believe, run that podcast, and they do phenomenal stuff. And I'll link their podcast down below, because they really are great guys, and they do a lot of like blue sky stuff, like you mentioned, George, which is a lot of fun. But in terms of, look, this is the thing. This is backstage, right? Like there's cast member stuff back here and like backstage buildings, from what I understand. Is that correct, George?
That's correct. Right where it says Slinky Dog Dash down in the toy store area. And then if you just go straight up, that whole section there, that's the backstage area.
So here's the thing. And a lot of fans will sort of like say like, oh yeah, you know, it's backstage, you know, we need that stuff. We can't do without it. Hey, look, as a Disneylander, someone that, you know, is rooted in the Anaheim parks, I'm just telling you guys right now, do not believe that. When fans say this stuff, it's never true. And I'm just being completely honest with you. Like, we went through the same stuff. The whole narrative. Oh, we had the same thing here in Anaheim. Oh, everything behind Toontown is backstage. It's Holy Land. We can't touch it. They need that space for this, that, and the other. Not really. They bulldoze 15 acres of it for Galaxy's Edge. They bulldoze like another building or two for Runaway Railway. There's always a way to make it happen. Disneyland is proof positive that if Disney wants to do something, they will rearrange, bulldoze, reconfigure, whatever they need to do to make it happen. So we're in the same stuff here with Hollywood Studios that, oh, well, it's backstage. We can't touch it because they need that space. Hogwash. Absolute hogwash. We've seen it in Anaheim. They can reconfigure this stuff if they want to do it. So, George, if they want to, look, that whole area above Slinky Dog Dash, if they want to reconfigure that into park space, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm all for it. But what do you think, Dre? What are your feelings on this? I mean, is this a possibility that they can kind of dip into this area, or where you kind of stand on it?
No, I was coming at it from the exact same angle. I mean, as you know, OG and I are kind of Anaheim guys. We kind of come from the Anaheim perspective, right? Or at least Disneyland perspective. So as Disneyland thinkers, we just think, hey, you know what? All of these backstage facilities, but you know, up until like the parking structure, I think there's a parking structure right to the north, like directly north of Slinky Dog Dash, that you know that you really can't relocate, and obviously that's actually an attractive feature when attempting to lure potential talent from cast members and so forth away from Universal. Parking is kind of a big deal, so that one we can't move. But everything else doesn't this also encompass some of the sound stages that were also back there as part of the studio tour, or am I getting myself? I
believe partial of it still may be, because since it's right next to Toy Story Land, that's where the backlot tour used to be. Yeah. So there still may be some empty backlot studios that aren't being utilized.
Yeah, my feeling is very similar to OG. It's if there's anything that's not critical infrastructure for the operation of the park that can't be, you know, taken and kind of placed elsewhere, cooling towers and so forth, right? You could just place that in an auxiliary site and kind of transfer that stuff in. Even like stuff like parade storage, you know, I mean, it can get pretty intense at Disneyland Resort. I'm confident that you can kind of shuffle some things around here. I believe, George, weren't we having a conversation about potential expansion into the parking lot that surrounds the actual park itself?
Yep, and I was going to bring that up because if you do, you can't really see it on this photo, but the parking lot that's southeast of the park of what this photo looks, it kind of hugs the park, if you will. It kind of embodies the park. So since it kind of does like this kind of half cork type of motion, that you could actually take off partial of that parking lot that's right next to Galaxy's Edge and even expand further beyond that. I would think that you can, because that's a pretty big parking lot for such a small park. I have to say it. Out of all 4 parks, Disney Hollywood Studios is the smallest.
Oh, you're on. You're
sorry
on
about
mute,
that.
right?
Sorry about that. I do apologize. I'm trying to mute these other guys here, but you can, like I said, you can kind of take all those spaces that kind of surround that park in kind of the lower quadrant there. Make a structure that's kind of off-site, almost similar to like the TTC and how it exists out there for Magic Kingdom, right? You can kind of put all that parking in a single structure or an auxiliary lot, and then tram people in. This is kind of why I was surprised where Star Cruiser's placement was because it was kind of so close to the park. It didn't need to be that close. You can really get creative when it comes to the expansion of this park specifically. It's not landlocked in the way that like Animal Kingdom is. Animal Kingdom is like the north of the park. You almost can't touch because there's so many animal enclosures, and you're talking about concrete. You're talking about state-of-the-art facilities. Animals have to get used to their new environments, new habitats, and so forth. So you have to go through that kind of process. Whereas Disney's Hollywood Studios, I look at it like an Anaheim situation where you could say it's a giant chessboard and you can move these pieces around at will. Some things you can't, but a lot of things you can.
And I really agree with you on that with the Galactic Star Cruiser, because it's kind of like they kind of limited their area down there, because that could have potentially been an expansion for Galaxy's Edge or for another land that they wanted to expand into Hollywood Studios. So putting it that close, as you had mentioned, Dre, that they could have at least had like a transportation that could have connected to the park to the Galactic Star Cruiser from a distance. I mean, as you had mentioned, even with the TTC, the parking lot for Magic Kingdom is nowhere near the park. It's like miles apart from just even getting onto the ferry boat to cross Bay Lake and the Seven Seas Lagoon to even get over to the entrance of the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that that's the thing. Like with this stuff, like the logistics and like what Disney wants to do, and they're always going to find a way to do it. And I think that when it comes to this, it very much is in line with what we see with the Anaheim Park, in that it doesn't take too much to kind of adjust and kind of move this stuff off property or move it in a different spot if they want to. Like you mentioned with the Galactic Star Cruiser, they could have moved it into here. I don't know. I think there's a lot of possibility here with expansion, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. But go ahead, Dre. I'm sorry.
And to give people kind of an idea of what you're talking about, OG, you remember Circuity Ranch and how it used to provide for stables and housing for the horses that used to go up and down Main Street, and how they've taken that and placed that in an offsite location, right? It's not even on resort proper. They have to truck those horses in every single day in order to have those Main Street vehicles, specifically the horse-drawn streetcars, actually operate for the day. We've seen the custom tooling and maintenance shops that would maintain a variety of different things on property, but specifically like the vending machines and the old classical machines that you find in the Penny Arcade. That maintenance shop is actually off-site as well, an off-site location where I think it's a couple blocks away in kind of a maintenance facility that's just a lot less in demand than some of the infrastructure and some of the things that are around Disneyland itself that may be preventing a future expansion. So if you can offload those things, then that really opens up the level of play. That the resort had to do a lot of that with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge for Disneyland. You know, people say, well, you got Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, you got Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, you didn't lose anything. Well, it's like we did, but we just we're kind of smart about where those things ended up being, and that's how you fit those things. Same thing with the parade facilities and so forth. The Disneyland Resort at least does a fair bit of this. This might be a foreign concept for Walt Disney World proper, but I think with parks like this, I think you had to explore those options.
100%. And that's the thing that, like, Disneyland Resort, they have to get very creative because we're so limited on space. You bring up a fantastic point, Ray, where it's like it might be kind of a foreign concept to Walt Disney World because Walt Disney World, they don't really have a space issue, you know? So it's not really something they have to deal with. But we've seen it here. We've seen how Disney approaches space, you know, issues. And when they want to put something in there like Galaxy's Edge, they're gonna find a way to do it. It's like that Jurassic Park quote: "Life finds a way." You know, Disney will find a way. They'll find a way to get that in there. But I have to ask you fellas a question.
Life finds a way.
There you go. Exactly. But I have to ask you guys a question. What would we put here though? Like, let's just say we're just blue sky in it right now. What would you put here in regards to park expansion if we could just, you know?
Are we plucking out concepts specifically, like exclusively to those that exist, or maybe blue sky set that they've imagined before? Is that?
No, I mean, yeah, you could do that. You could.
I guess the sky's the limit. I guess whatever.
Sky's the limit? Okay.
Yeah, I do know that if they didn't have the issue with the licensing with Marvel, I know for a fact that's what would have gone in there.
Absolutely, 100%, no question whatsoever. I feel it still can't. Even though you're going to have Guardians, the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind at Epcot, it doesn't mean that the majority... Sorry about that, I do apologize. That doesn't mean that the majority of different Marvel concepts couldn't come to Disney's Hollywood Studios. Avengers Campus, for example. I mean, Cosmic Rewind is kind of like... They're saying it's like a World Showcase pavilion almost, and that it's supposed to represent Xandar. So it's kind of consistent with that story, whereas this, you could put, Rock and Roller Coaster in Paris is being redone to Iron Man. Wouldn't, bring that over here. Don't touch Clouds on Tower of Terror. But everything else, you can do it, right? And then whatever Avengers Z ticket that you have coming up in DCA, slot it for here, because obviously this park definitely needs kind of a 1-2 punch of something to take the pressure off Rise, right? For a long time, Cars Land was going to come here. That was. Yeah.
That's what they thought. That's what they thought was going to be what Toy Story Land is. They literally thought that's where Cars Land, one and done. But
Kathleen Magnum was promoted in the ranks to facilitate that whole attraction concept coming to Walt Disney World, Disney's Hollywood Studios specifically. The concept that I heard that got pretty far along was an indoor Radiator Springs Racers. And the idea was, well, we don't need to necessarily have the entire town of Radiator Springs because it's represented in the attraction itself. So if you could do like an indoor version of it perpetually at night or something, you could do that. But it's just...
But I do have to say, though, I am in a way, and I'm probably in the minority on this, but I'm glad that didn't happen because Cars Land is such an affiliation for me at Disney California Adventure. It fits in perfectly, and it gives me an excuse to say, hey, I want to go out to Disneyland to experience Cars Land, where I'm so much closer to Walt Disney World that I could easily say, do I want to spend the extra money to go all the way to California, or I could just take a 2-hour flight? And that's where I love the differential attractions that separate Disneyland from Walt Disney World. So I am kind of glad in a way that didn't happen.
Yeah, well, and as a Disneylander, I'm glad that DCA has something they can call its own. Like right now, it's a unique thing for DCA. So I understand where you're coming from, George. Like even from a California perspective, I appreciate that Cars Land is an exclusive for DCA. DCA doesn't have a whole lot, so at least we have that, right? At least we can hold on to that. But here's the thing with Marvel, and this is the interesting thing. I think that the contract for Universal only pertains to the characters that are currently in Islands of Adventure. But here's the thing. A lot of the characters that are currently in Islands of Adventure are characters that sort of they're moving on from in a lot of ways, like the Avengers proper, Hulk, Captain America, right? Like these are characters that Disney, like Marvel, the MCU is moving away from. When you get into movies like Eternals, when you get into like Moon Knight, when you get into like things like Scarlet Witch, right? These are characters that Disney can use in Florida because Universal doesn't have those characters. So technically on paper, now will Disney do it? I have no idea. But technically Disney can use, they could in theory create an Eternals e-ticket in Hollywood Studios. They could make a Moon Knight attraction in Hollywood Studios. There's a lot of potential there. With the MCU moving away from these core Marvel characters and getting into these more lesser known properties, I don't know. There's a lot. There's a lot to kind of dip into if they want to,
Now, can they? I know that they can't touch Captain America, but now can they touch the Falcon's version of Captain America?
I think.
Believe so. Go ahead, Dre. I'm sorry.
Well, no. Because the moniker is switching.
Right.
It doesn't matter because I think it's the Captain
It's
America
still the
umbrella,
name.
which would encompass both Steve Rogers and Falcon. So it's those things are contentious. I mean, Disney has kind of skirted that line and kind of pushed the limits, and sometimes they get pushed back, and then sometimes they can go forward. So it's but with that, I agree with OG. I mean, go with kind of these kind of oddball characters that really, that Universal wouldn't have dreamt of acquiring the rights to, and make attractions and
I know that they probably couldn't, but you know what it kind of reminds me of? If you look at that long stretch of land that leads up to that big run, green patch area. If you could actually bring up the photo again. If we were to do something with Marvel, if you look right where the Slinky Dog Dash is, and then you see that whole backstage area, and then right at the top up north, you see that big run patch of trees and everything. That kind of reminds me of Wanda Vision, because you have the long street that you just walked on, and then you have the cul-de-sac right at the end. So it's I know that they probably couldn't use that, but I think that would be so cool to add that into Hollywood Studios, because Disney has even said they're moving away from backstage to kind of putting you into the story. And what better way to put you into a Marvel situation with WandaVision, because then it talks about the 1950s, the 60s, the 70s. It puts you in those classic television moments. So I thought WandaVision would have been perfect.
Well, and this is the one thing that I've always kind of wished that Disney, the direction Disney would go in with Hollywood Studios, and kind of be a park that celebrates the studios of the Walt Disney Company, kind of like the wonderful worlds of Disney, so to speak, and have entire areas dedicated to Lucasfilm, which we kind of already have with Batuu, and then have an area for Marvel, which you can do like Moon Knight, Eternals, right? Have an area for Disney, have an area for Pixar. And they've kind of already set this up in the park, but have a wonderful worlds of Disney kind of park that kind of celebrates all the properties of the Walt Disney Company. I would love to see something like that, a direction for this.
There's the new park title right there. There's the new park title. You could drop the studios, the wonderful worlds of Disney. That
exactly. And here's the thing too, is like you said, George, the studio thing, that backlot thing, is sort of passe now. I mean, even Universal, who invented that art form, they're moving away from that. Like even in Hollywood, in Universal Hollywood, they're not really embracing that anymore. They're doing like Wizarding World, more immersive, kind of like experience the franchise, right? I think that Disney should go in this direction with Hollywood Studios. I really, really do.
No, they already are. They already are. I mean, that was part of the reason they transformed the park in this way was to do exactly what you astutely point out, OG. I mean, it's partly it was to get rid of the kind of the studio, kind of production side of movies, and embrace the kind of, hey, kind of the escapist entertainment. You are going into an immersive environment and having your own story within these franchises. But the other part too was giving these various kind of franchises like Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, their own kind of spaces within this whole thing. It's just Disney couldn't really set on a name to do that. but I think, Wonderful World of Disney, that's a really interesting idea. And one that can kind of bring this park kind of together in a way that's kind of mishmash right now.
And that's where Disney, I know for a fact, will continue to expand this park because that's their goal. They're not going to stop at Toy Story and Star Wars. They're going to transform this park so it kind of is cohesive with one land to the other. And one last concept I'd like to add to that is because this was actually confirmed to me by two Imagineers that what Rock and Roller Coaster was supposed to be was a themed indoor roller coaster based on the scene in Monsters, Inc. with the doors.
Right.
And they had the concept done and everything. And at the time, they just could not get the right sponsor that they wanted to put up the money for this attraction. So if that was to come to fruition with Rock and Roller Coaster being reskinned to Monsters, Inc., they could take that whole area and they could have a Monsters, Inc. kind of spliced with Monsters University.
Right.
If they wanted to.
Monstropolis and so forth. I mean, the Monsters attraction was on the slate for a while. They really wanted to bring that out to Disney Studios, and eventually just didn't work out like you point out there, George. Another thing too that was slated for Disney Studios was Indiana Jones Adventure from Disneyland. Now, that would have been quite epic, but at the time, Animal Kingdom's coming out. They needed a kind of a ride vehicle system. They got it first.
But it does make me wonder if Indiana Jones will still have a bigger presence at the studios once Indy 5 comes out, and really how big of a hit that becomes if it brings kind of Indy out from underneath the sand, no pun intended, but that they could even do something with the area, kind of retheme the Indy stunt show. Because I know for right now that it's now back up with their show times, but they're pushing a lot of the show times back, and they're cutting a lot of the show times for Indy for whatever reason. But I know it's a classic. I know it opened with Hollywood Studios back even when it was MGM, but I think that would be a perfect area just to keep it Indiana Jones, but kind of retheme it to a whole new generation.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing that's kind of funny, because a lot of fans, when you talk Indiana Jones Adventure coming to Florida, they always say Animal Kingdom, which is kind of weird because like the Indiana Jones thing, the whole franchise has nothing to do with animals, but for some reason it's always Animal Kingdom that people kind of throw that attraction into. But really, it would make way more sense, like what you were saying, George, to put that in Hollywood Studios. And if you had a park that was like, like I mentioned, the Wonderful World of Disney, that was sort of celebrating every studio of the company, you can do that. It would work, where you can kind of like, you can have a Lucasfilm area with Batuu and Indiana Jones and things like that. It would work so good in that park. It would work so well. I really hope they do it. I don't know if they will, but I hope they do.
That would be cool. Do you fellas think that Star Tours is going to stay? As far as like, because that's going to be adjacent to Indiana Jones, but with them already having Galaxy's Edge, and being at Disneyland, it could be a whole nother thing because they need something in there for Tomorrowland, especially where it's at now. But as far as Hollywood Studios, do you think it could have the potential for them to just 86 it?
What do you think, Dre?
I think it would have to be a really strong idea. I think it would have to be a really strong concept in order to get rid of that attraction, because the footprint is not that large. Star Tours, it's actually listed on the map there. You can see it. It's actually labeled one of the few things that is. It's not a huge footprint as far as complexity of the attraction. It's not that complex. and it
Now, what
provides
if you were to
overall
connect
capacity for
it?
the.
What if you were to connect it to the Indiana Jones site? Because now the Indiana Jones site is right to the right side. That it's that oddly shaped building.
To the right of it with that weird kind of like amphitheater looking building.
Yeah.
You could do that, and,
Yeah.
and it sits kind of in the perfect spot. It's between the Indiana Jones stunt show and Galaxy's Edge right below it, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I mean they're pretty close. I mean that could be part of your Lucasfilm, Lucasfilm Legends land or whatever, right? I mean it's a
Disney,
possibility.
start taking some notes because this is some good stuff.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's such a modular ride system. You can put anything in those star speeders, right? In those motion simulators. So I think it just doesn't quite make sense to replace them outright and replace that land, replace that, without a really kind of big for real concept that would not only replace them but actually add capacity along with it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, you guys are lucky in Florida that Star Tours kind of sits in kind of like that sweet spot. You can kind of put it into like Batuu. Like if you do my idea, you can kind of make it part of an overall Lucasfilm area. It's workable. It's definitely workable. Much better than what we got here in Anaheim, where it's completely opposite ends of the park. You have Star Tours in Tomorrowland, and you got Batuu at the way other end. There's no way you can really connect the two. In Florida, you have a real opportunity. So we'll see. It's all about how creative they get with this, because I think
And that's what I was just going to say to kind of sum this all up. I do wish in time that Walt Disney World could then gain the mentality that Disneyland has, because Disneyland has to move in a different pace because of the limited amount of space that you guys have to work with. Where with Walt Disney World, they just kind of rely on their laurels of saying, oh, we got all this extra land, we got all this extra room, let's just throw this. I love that creativity. And I actually, Dre and I were talking about that when we were recording for New Orleans Square, of the detail in that land alone. And it's like Walt Disney World kind of has some of that lacking, because they just kind of rely on, okay, we have the space to do it, but so we don't really have to put in the effort. And I really wish that Walt Disney World would get to that higher level that Disneyland has.
No, completely. Yeah, Disneyland, I gotta say, they definitely do, and I've been saying this for a long time, they definitely utilize whatever little space they have in much more creative ways. And it's not even like a new thing. The entire reason why we even have amazing things like the stretching room in the Haunted Mansion, it was a logistical solution to getting people underneath the berm and into the show building. Right? You had to get people underground and into that show building. So it was a logistical thing, and the Imagineers were able to work it in a creative way and address it. And Disneyland has a history of doing that, of really ironing out these logistical problems with creative solutions. I think that's really been a boon for Disneyland. I think that the limitation in space has really given the resort an opportunity to kind of give us some really cool stuff. I even think like Galaxy's Edge is another example of that. I think the Galaxy's Edge in Anaheim is much better because they had to really get creative and how to work that into the Rivers of America. I think that they did a much better job with that than Florida, which is basically, we're just going to put it right next to Toy Story Land and put a tunnel.
I would have loved to see maybe a Star Wars Lego set that's like sitting at the end of Toy Story Land that kind of transitions you to say, hey, you're moving into a brand of Star Wars. Like that would have been really cool.
Oh, that's kind of funny. Yeah.
That would be incredible to have like oversized Star Wars toys with like the Kenner label on it, like the old school Kenner like logo or something. Oh, so good. And as a Star Wars fan, I think we can all appreciate that. I mean, I grew up in the 80s with those Star Wars toys. That would be a great homage to my generation. And it would be a great transition into, between Toy Story and Batuu. I think it'd be great. Will they do it? Probably not. But I still think it would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point, George. It's the Imagineers were so methodical with the expansions of Disneyland over the years. They were so careful. They were so like, because Disneyland's so small, every single portion of Disneyland really has to bear its own weight, so to speak. It really has to kind of absorb its own kind of its own level of the crowds, away from other areas. You can't have areas just abandoned. You can't have areas that just don't get utilized enough because your crowd flow patterns are so predicated on that kind of evening it out of all these different areas. You bring up Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and to think like they had to rearrange the railroad, they had to provide a marina for Fantasmic, they had to block off and wall off Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, they had to provide kind of this landscape thing for Rivers of America. Like, that kind of stuff is really something. Is really kind of special to Disneyland. I wish that Walt Disney World was in the same modality, kind of that had the same mindset or philosophy when it came to their expansions. Unfortunately, we just haven't really seen that.
Yeah. I would love to do a show with you guys, like the before and after Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland, like the logistics that it took to the rearranging of what it was before to the after. I think that'd be really cool.
There's so much to
that
it.
would be a great show, George. I'm down to do it. We should definitely arrange time to do that. I was in Galaxy's Edge like 2 weeks ago. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. And we were walking from like Frontierland into the land, and it just, the way they blended all that in, and you go from the frontier, right, the Wild Wild West, into the galactic frontier, was just so perfect. And it's slow. It's not like an abrupt change. It's not like here's Frontierland and boom, now you're in space. You slowly make that transition in such a beautiful way. I love what they did with that. And I want to see more of that in Florida. I want to see them do those kind of things in Florida instead of just like, hey, you know what? We got all the room in the world. Let's just plop it here.
Even with the forested areas on the other side of the land, right? With the Resistance Outpost and how it's kind of set in the forest, it blends beautifully with Critter Country, and that kind of slow transition of things. I mean, they really kind of methodically thought it out, and I agree with you, OG. If we can get that kind of level of expansion where you have these kind of slow transitions and this kind of methodical storytelling when it comes to landscape architecture and so forth, I think it would be a big boon for Walt Disney World.
Yep.
But part of that is because those Imagineers are California based, and I think that brings us to our next topic.
Yes,
of the day.
perfect segue. You just hit the nail right on. I was waiting for that nice little click, and I think you just found it there, Dre. But before we move on, I just have to give a big thank you to DisneySpace Podcast for actually giving me the idea to do this segment. I really do appreciate it. We will link you guys down below at this video, and keep the ideas coming. Everything with Disney and Walt Disney Imagineering, the sky's the limit. No idea is a bad idea. So always remember that and keep it going.
Yeah, 100%.
So as Mr. VashSky, host of Freshly Squeezed, had mentioned, that there has been some big time debacle between Disney and the state of Florida, especially what's going on right now. With a lot of the logistics going on politically. And as many of you know, or have may not known, that Disney had decided to move the Imagineer division, WDI, as the home base in California to Florida at Lake Nona. And now with the LGBTQ community and the Don't Say Gay bill debacle that's going on right now between Disney and DeSantis and just the state of, and then the cast members on top of it, the state of Florida in general. It's just a whole big mess right now, folks. Let's just leave it at that. And but now Governor Newsome is now tapping back into the equation, that he's seeing this golden egg opportunity to now, before this move even occurs, to bring back Imagineers to their home at 1401 Flower Street in Glendale,
Right.
and to keep their main home in California. And actually, that he tweeted, as what you're looking at right in front of you. We here in California respect your employees' families. We think our LGBTQ residents are part of what makes our state great. Let's talk. And that's Newsome actually addressing CEO Bob Chapek and the rest of the Walt Disney Company. So I have to ask you fellas, what do you make all this? Because it seems like Newsome just thrown in another monkey wrench into this already messed up machine.
Well, yeah. Well, and this isn't the first time Newsome has tweeted at Bob Chapek. He did this a couple of weeks ago as well, at the height of the whole Florida bill situation. He tweeted at Bob Chapek saying, "Hey," like same kind of thing that he tweeted here, saying like, "Hey, Chapek, we respect your employees, families and decisions and sexuality, and why don't you rethink your Florida move?" And then now he tweeted this, I think it was last night, if I'm not mistaken, kind of reiterating that same thing. I've seen a lot of people, aside from even Newsome, right? I've seen a lot of people like on social media, even kind of pounding this message home, saying Imagineering, Disney, Chapek, keep the Imagineers in California. Keep them in California. Keep them in California. Here's my prediction. Okay, and look, there's way too much investment already spent on moving to Florida. They're already, from what I understand, building the facility in Lake Nona. So obviously, they can't really just cancel it. Okay, they can't cancel the Lake Nona move entirely, and they're not going to do that. Okay, they're not going to do it. But what I will think I think that it's a possibility. What they will do, Chapek is looking to win optics points, so to speak, right? He's got a lot of heat lately with the Florida bill. He's looking for any kind of way to kind of win, so to speak. I think what he will do probably next few weeks, maybe in a month or so, is sort of kind of throw an olive branch out, kind of a middle ground thing where, okay, look, we're too far deep. We're too far into the Lake Nona move. But what I will say is that we will expand our California presence. We're not going to maybe send as many people over to Florida. We'll keep more here in California. We'll add a division of Imagineering here in California. We'll add jobs here in Glendale for Imagineering. Something along those lines to sort of solidify that California presence. I think Chapek is going to do that. I would be shocked if he didn't. I really would be shocked. Dre, what do you think? You think that he's going to make these moves? Do you think he's just going to go forward as planned? Where are you at in regard to this?
I think at minimum, it's interesting. When you originally brought this up, I kind of thought to myself, man, that's a pretty extreme measure. I'm not sure if you would take that. But now as everything's kind of developed and now that you've really stood firm on this, I've kind of come around to your side. I think he'll at least slow roll this out. Originally, I think the timeline was like 18 months. Even the Wrap article that came out before that really went into this, and I want to read a section here in a moment, but sure. It kind of alludes to the fact that they are already slow rolling this out, that they aren't sticking to the original timelines, and this has had kind of a profound effect on Imagineering and in this division of the company. Go ahead and share that screen I have for you, OG, and I'll read these two paragraphs for you. So the Wrap spoke to three individuals with knowledge of the Imagineering division who estimated the total number of Imagineers who chose to move to Florida to be around 300. Ooh. The pre-COVID staff of around 1,800 was reduced by half due to canceled projects and furloughs during the pandemic. In a layoff of 28,000 employees during the summer of 2020, Disney announced 411 of them were Imagineers. According to one former Imagineer, a manager said during the termination process that, quote, 80% of the creative would be dismissed. That would put the number of those remaining to below 100. 80%. I mean, that's an extraordinary number. That's an attrition of talent that we have never seen before. I mean, I don't even think Epcot reduced after Epcot was created. I should say. I don't think after that they purged that many Imagineers. I mean that's a quite substantial amount. So you're talking about a huge loss in talent already. Do you kind of change things up to at least attract some of those people back?
Right.
And establish permanent divisions in California to keep them there and kind of slow roll this out, maybe not on 18-month time schedule, but maybe, extend it out to like maybe a 5-year or a 10-year. I think it is a distinct possibility.
Because there was even Imagineers that quit their jobs because of the move to Lake Nona, not even before all this had occurred between the state of Florida and Disney, but just because they could not afford to do a big move like that. And I do know that there were several Imagineers that actually came out on Twitter that said, today is my last day, after 15 plus years with the company, unfortunately, I have to end it. So that even cuts that portion down even more. And it just seems like it keeps on dwindling. And as you had mentioned, OG, that Chapek is going to need some cool points right now. He's going to have to do anything that he can to, get back in favor as CEO. But my take on it is, and I'm probably going to get some heat for this, so I'm going to try to say this as nicely as I possibly can, that I do see that in that manner. But then I also see it on the other side. As you had mentioned, they're already building the facility in Lake Nona. They're going to proceed. And it's like, even with everything going on right now in the company, are we still seeing major crowds in the parks? Yes, it hasn't changed. Are you still seeing cast members doing their job in the parks despite of what's going on? Yes. It's like, no matter what is going on, like internally within the company is still progressing forward. And I don't think that it would have to take a lot for them to officially like cancel the whole entire operation in Lake Nona and them take an even bigger loss in budget and money than to what is already being lost right now. So I think that they'll still proceed with Lake Nona, but I still think in the back of their mind, they'll keep that tweet in their minds to say, hey, we also have a slight plan B that we can add to Lake Nona if need be.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to cancel. Like, if people think they're just going to completely cancel this Florida move, you're going to be disappointed. It's too far along. And from what I've heard, this has been in the works for a long time, even before Bob Chapek. I know, even before Bob Chapek.
How dare you disgrace the good name that is Bob Iger, sir?
I know.
How dare you?
I know. How dare? Yeah, exactly. This has been in the works for a very long time, and they're not. And they're too far along. They've already broken ground on the Lake Nona facility. It's gonna happen, you guys. Them getting rid of the Lake Nona project is like when Disney would comply to say, okay, we're going to stop construction immediately on Guardians of the Galaxy, Cosmic Rewind, and Tron. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, you guys. So at the very most, like we've said, they're gonna slow roll it out, which is what Dre mentioned, and they'll probably announce that they're going to keep more jobs here in California than initially planned. Okay, they're probably going to do something to appease people that are mad,
But they're going to say, we already had that in the back of our minds. Like, it had nothing to do with the tweet, We were already, like, planning on doing this anyway.
Oh, that's what the company does all the time.
Right.
They'll quietly cancel things in the background and then quietly pivot and say, all part of the plan, guys. All part of the plan.
All part of the plan. And here's the other thing, too, is CNBC... I'll link the video down below, but CNBC, and I think it's actually mentioned right here, that Disney's getting like a $500 or almost $600 million tax break from the move, right? Yeah. Which sounds like a lot, which it is a fucking lot of money for us. Yeah, it's a lot of money, dude. Like, for sure. For Disney, though, not that much money. They're not saving billions. They're saving $600 million on these taxes. Look, it's a good amount of money, but is it worth the drama? Probably not. They're probably going to make some sort of concessions here to sort of keep many of these Imagineers here in California. The tax breaks just aren't good enough for Disney, these mega billion corporation, to deal with all that heat, and Chapek can't afford it. He just can't.
I'll push back a little bit and say, yeah, I believe that in the video, in this CNBC article, video, it said 580 million, which is consistent with what we were reading here. But I think like averaged out over the whole thing, it was like $25 million a year or something like that. Yeah. And I agree with you. It's like a rounding error, like it is. But when you consider the delta between California taxes and Florida taxes, even in the long run, I mean, that's going to be a huge, just operating costs that you just sever right off. So sure. I think they were looking at that. But I think I agree with you, OG. I mean, this is a lot of heat. This is a lot of headache and attrition that we're seeing at the creative ranks. You know, is this worth it? I mean, really, those creatives are what set Imagineering apart from almost any other creative division in any company, right? And now you're losing a significant amount of that. It even says in the article, Joe Rohde, Jim Schull, Kevin Lively, who was just working on the Jungle Cruise project that debuted during the events of 2021, right? That Jungle Cruise project just opened, and yet that guy's gone. I mean, it's and we've seen this before, folks. I mean, OG and I were having this conversation before the show that we've seen these kind of Imagineering ranks get purged and go on to become creative powerhouses as part of other creative avenues for other companies, right? We saw Universal Creative really take off with a lot of those ideas that came about when they opened up Islands of Adventure. A lot of those are former Imagineers who came from projects like Tokyo Disney's partly Tokyo Disney Seas, but also like Animal Kingdom and so forth. I mean, when those guys were purged, they went on to create some amazing stuff and became Disney's competition in those realms. So what do you think is going to happen here when you lose, like 1,700 Imagineers? I mean, that's a lot of creative output.
Those were Imagineers. Those were Imagineers that were working on the Beastly Kingdom project for Animal Kingdom.
A lot of people were working on Beastly Kingdom and took those ideas straight from Beastly Kingdom to implement into Islands of Adventure that we saw in like 1999, 2000. I mean, that's where they went. And so I just look at this and I go, you're creating your own competition doing this.
But I will say that
cost you a lot in the long run.
Joe Rohde and Kevin Rafferty, I mean, they had a head on their shoulders of when they decided to bow out of the company during the right time. Because I mean, like, they
saw the writing on the wall. They saw it. They saw the hammer coming down the pike. They saw that the budgets were going to be cut, that products were going to be suspended for an indefinite period amount of time. They saw all of this, and they read the room and said, you know what? I'm just not going to do it anymore. In the case of Kevin Rafferty, he retires completely. Joe Rohde goes on to, I believe, work for
Virgin Atlantic.
Virgin Atlantic, yeah. And to be honest, can you blame them with as much change as we're seeing? I don't know.
No, I can't. And you're right, Dre, 100%. You create your own competition. I mean, in the 70s and 80s, a lot of the Disney animation talent was sort of purged. People left, and ironically, they went to Pixar at the time. And that became Disney's biggest competition in like the mid to late 90s when Nintendo kind of went through that when it came to like PlayStation. Nintendo was supposed to sort of spearhead that PlayStation program. They got cold feet, and ultimately PlayStation became their biggest competition. This happens very often in business. And look, Dre, to his point, when you lose this many Imagineers and they go to Universal or they go to some other theme park company, you're giving these other companies, your competition, you're giving them all this vast talent pool. That's not good. That's not good. Chapek needs to know that they need to do something. Chapek and Disney needs to do something to keep, at least stop the bleeding, right? Yeah. And the only way to do that, as far as I can see, is to keep more jobs here in California. They are hell-bent on working here in California. They got to do something. And I think they will. I think Chapes is going to definitely do that. I think there's going to be some kind of move where they're going to mitigate this a little bit. They're going to keep more jobs in California than initially planned, something along those lines. They have to. They just have to. They're losing too many people.
And that's the issue right now that the Disney company is going through. It's like they're really trying to appease everybody, and it's so hard to do at both left and right side, and it keeps on compiling on top of them where they're trying to appease one side and then it's affecting the other side, and then then they're kind of answering the call to the other side, and then it completely reverts back to, well, you just told us this. So it's like no matter which way Disney goes right now, it's exactly that's exactly what it is.
Let's see.
We've made mistakes. I have made mistakes, but we own them.
That's it.
We're all human. We all fall short sometimes.
Right?
That's it. I mean, it's I think the issue with the company right now is that it has become, like you said, George, it has become very political, where it's actually doing kind of internal damage. And I mean, we've seen petitions inside the halls of the studio from actually both sides. Arguing for their points, and it's like maybe the best route is to go in a politically neutral direction. And I think that was Bob Chapek's initial idea, right. And he really got caught up in it. And his advisors, I'm telling you, I mean that the way they bungled that situation. This is why I say sabotage, because it's he couldn't have done a worse job at it. And it's there you go.
We've made mistakes. I have made mistakes.
There you go.
It was a good idea in that moment, but it was bad execution.
Yeah. No, well, and I mean,
he was in a tough spot. He was in a real tough spot because he like, it wasn't even just about like placating the masses necessarily. He was having people within the company expressing discontent, like they were mad. So what's he going to do? Is he going to lose Kevin Feige, Pete Docter, all his talent over this? Like Chapek, I do not envy that man at all. He was thrown into the shitter like from minute one.
He was thrown into an unwinnable situation right from jump. So, I mean,
and I think Iger knew that. Iger knew the route that it was going. I'm sorry. I do like Bob Iger. I really do. He did the company wonders. But there was some contingencies at the end where he knew what was going to happen. He's like, okay, I'm just going to throw in the most dry, naive person that would literally just kind of play ball to wherever he's supposed to play ball. And I'll come unscathed. I'll be known as the Golden Man.
Look at the beginning of this recent controversy. He was the one that sent out the tweet. Do you think that's a coincidence? I don't think so. Go ahead, OG. Sorry about that.
Right. No, 100%, Dre. 100%. And here's the thing too is, and maybe I was naive because I actually believed for many years. I'm like, you know what, Bob Iger, you don't have to love every decision, but I always believed in my heart of hearts that this man truly cared about the Walt Disney Company. If this is true,
I sound like a Bob Iger dick rider.
I gotta play that drop. I have it. I gotta play it.
Play it again.
Oh, give me a second here.
God, I sound like a Bob Iger dick rider.
Yes, John Campia. No, but you're absolutely like. Look, this is the thing. I was naive too. I really believed like it. Hey, this guy really does care about the Walt Disney Company. Here's it. If this is true that he threw Chapek under the bus. Right? Like, oh, you know what? Throw him out to the wolves right before the pandy. That completely changes my viewpoint of this man because you're fucking over Bob Chapek. Fine, whatever. But you're also fucking over Disney, though. The company you say that you love so much. This is a man, Bob Iger. He spent years saying how important it was to get the transition right. To get it right. And then he just willy-nilly out of nowhere throws Chapek right before the pandemic and say, hey, go ahead, do your thing. I don't understand that. Like, don't you think that's going to hurt the company you say you love so much? Like that's not just, you're not just screwing over Chapek. You're screwing over the company. Do you understand? Like, that's the thing that makes me mad. I don't have a personal investment in Bob Chapek, the man. but I do have a personal investment in the company. And when you're doing that, and you know that could potentially hurt this company that you say you love so much, I don't know. And that really does, it changes my mindset about Bob Iger, because I think that if you really did care about Disney, he wouldn't have done that. Assuming that's true. Assuming
right. And if that's,
I don't know for sure. Yeah. None of us do. But if that is true, well, he doesn't really care that much about the company. Then you can't have but if he's going to throw Chapek under the bus, he doesn't give a shit about the Disney company. The two cannot be true at the same time. They're contradictory.
There's an image that I just shared with you just now. If you can share it for a moment, I really like seeing it, because it's Bob Iger with the money bags leaving while the stock price of Disney's coming down on Chapek right here. I believe this is part of I think it was like a Hollywood Reporter, I think, had this piece of art, and it's so emblematic. It's so symbolic of what actually happened, because I think you're right, OG. I think he put him in an unwinnable situation, and to Chapek's credit, he actually came out pretty well, all things considering. He had the whole world in front of him with a century pandemic of that magnitude, and he got out with the company, relatively unscathed. I think Bob Iger, he used the company for his own devices. Honestly, that's just my opinion on it. Looking back at the history of the company, I think he used it to boost his own image, his own ego. I mean, he got into the political realm with the company just because he wanted to be in that kind of that side of the political spectrum for a presidential run. What does that say about Iger? And it's a lot of what we're dealing with when it comes to the company and that direction we're dealing with now, and it's coming out and manifesting itself in all these different avenues, and it's making Chapek's reign, or anybody's reign really, that takes that seat, much harder than it would have otherwise would have been.
No, 100%, 100%, Dre. You hit the nail. You hit the nail on the head with that. And Iger, look. And this is the thing that's interesting, okay? Bob Iger said that the reason why he's retiring, or a big reason why he is retiring, is because he sort of lost the ability to sort of see other points of view. Remember that? And I don't remember what article it was, but he's mentioned that, he sort of had the inability to sort of take outside viewpoints, right? It was like his way or the highway. And he wanted to kind of nip that in the bud and sort of, leave before it got worse. Well, he had that mentality as Disney CEO and chairman of the board. You don't think he still has that mentality? Of course he does. So now Chapek is running the show, and it bugs him because Chapek isn't doing every single thing the way Bob Iger would have done it. And maybe he's sort of throwing wrenches in the gears and sort of sabotaging. Again, not saying for sure, but it's a possibility, because it's not the way Iger wanted it. And Iger said, and he admitted it, that he had a problem with people's outside opinions that didn't jive with his own. So it's a very big possibility that this is all
Iger has he said, during this whole thing, you know what? It's not great to be data driven completely. That's a shot at Chapek. That's a shot across the bow at the captain there. And then right before this incident happens, a tweet goes off and kind of launches this whole thing into motion. Right. So as far as I'm concerned, Iger's already on record undermining Chapek. And I think Chapek has a right to be miffed about that, quite frankly. I think that's an accurate interpretation. It's making Chapek, or anybody's life who's ever to be the CEO, or whoever's in the CEO position, much harder than otherwise would have been.
And Michael Eisner, to his credit, did not do that to Bob Iger.
Right.
Because, look, Michael Eisner, he disagreed with a lot of what Bob Iger did, because they're two different men. Of course they disagreed. But he didn't go out there publicly saying, I don't agree with Bob Iger. He wasn't public about it. He was in the shadows. He kept quiet. He let Bob Iger run the company because Bob Iger is now the CEO. I just wish Bob Iger would let Chapek do his thing. Bob Iger promoted this guy like 3 times. He was the distribution chief or whatever it was for home video. Under Bob Iger, he got promoted to the what was it? The consumer products. Mm-hmm. Then again promoted a few years later to parks and resorts, and then again hand selected by Bob Iger to be the CEO. If you had this much confidence in Mr. Chapek, let the guy do his job and back off. If you didn't think he was good for the job, then you shouldn't have picked him. It's
he handpicked him. He handpicked him. It's like, then you're going to go and criticize the fact of what he's doing is completely wrong. Then if you really had that much of an issue, then you shouldn't have picked him from the get-go. But I will say this, though, that Disney has been in many rocky situations up and down throughout the company. And you could actually see that on the Imagineering story on Disney Plus. You could see all the ins and outs, the ups and downs, the lows and the highs, and Disney always seems to find its way to come out on top. And I feel that this is just another piece of that puzzle that just needs to be kind of put into perspective and fit into the right segment for the whole scope of the Walt Disney Company. Have they ever been at something at this caliber before? Probably not, due to the situation that's what's going on all at once. Right. But I do feel that Disney will come out on top once they kind of work out all these kinks, whatever they may be. And I will continue to keep on saying it, that we want to see Disney succeed. We want the company to strive and move forward to what the founder always wanted it to be. So I will end it on that. And we do have another topic. I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Freshly Squeezed.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up. I know we're already going an hour, but ladies and gentlemen, I think you'd really like to see what this is all about here. I was actually had a snippet of a survey sent to me that I thought was extremely interesting. So let me go ahead and share that with you guys. Sorry, I haven't done this in advance. But this is pretty revealing. So you will know that we have stated on this show probably a couple times that the 50th anniversary celebration isn't looked that highly at Walt Disney World, and that has its own implications and so forth. So I kind of wanted to go over this because I think Disney's coming to that conclusion as well. And they're asking, so how did the Walt Disney World 50th anniversary celebration compare to your expectations? About what was expected, better than expected, or worse than expected, right? And then it goes on. If you say worse than expected, which reasons best describe why you felt that the Walt Disney World 50th anniversary celebration was below expectations? And the different answers that you can select here, it's multiple choice, are, I think, say a lot about the overall perception of Walt Disney World's 50th anniversary. And I think it's in line with what we've been hearing from both Disney Twitter, from both regular guests, from guest relations, all of that stuff. So we'll go over it real fast. Number one, the prices for commemorative merchandise were too high. 2, the selection of commemorative merchandise was limited. 3, the 50th anniversary celebration decor was limited. Okay, the commemorative entertainment for the celebration was lacking. So entertainment.
Sorry.
It seemed like just another day in the park. It wasn't as good as other Disney celebrations. Interesting. Special food and beverage offerings were limited. The nightly fireworks show didn't celebrate the 50th anniversary. There were long lines to purchase merchandise. The celebration didn't celebrate, quote, classic Disney and lacked nostalgia. The crowds made it difficult to enjoy the celebration. There were long lines to purchase special food and beverage options. It wasn't, quote, special enough for a 50th anniversary celebration. The commemorative merchandise I won was unavailable, and then it has some comment sections there. So I wanted to get your guys' reaction on this because I thought this was unbelievably juicy.
And you're right, Dre. This is absolutely juicy.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually added this. I'm really glad you did, because this is, and they're not even just going, they're going, I'm going to say it, here it comes. They're going balls to the wall, because this is like, they're not taking it lightly. They are literally.
Sorry, a little bit late on that.
They are literally actually saying what all guests are actually complaining. And the fact that they're comparing it to other celebrations,
do they watch the show? I mean, they do. If you followed Orzo 55 for any period of time, it's everything we've been talking about this entire time. It's crazy. It's like they took the words right out of the show.
Yeah.
But
no,
I actually have to, and while we get into the discussion, I have to actually add something on this as well that I thought was very interesting. The Orlando International Airport is now removing the 50th anniversary decor from the building. Now, here's the interesting part. The 50th anniversary isn't over yet, and yet summer didn't even come yet. This is going to be the first summer that Disney will be having the 50th anniversary where everyone and their grandmother is going to be going, and no decor when they arrive. It's bad enough they don't have the transportation. Now we're not getting the decor. So,
I mean, guys, when was the last time you saw a 50th anniversary celebration commercial?
No.
I mean, that tells you
I've
everything.
I've told you guys this before in many videos. Like I forget that the 50th is even a thing anymore. Like after that big push in early October of 2021, like 2 weeks after that, it was almost like an afterthought. Like I remember the Disneyland 50th anniversary and even the 60th anniversary for Disneyland, that it consumed everything. The conversation in the fandom, when you went to the parks, it was all about the 50th. It was all about the 60th. The Walt Disney World 50th, it was like 2 weeks in October, done. I have to remember like, oh shit, yeah, you're right. It's still happening. I don't even remember it.
And those 2 weeks was all about merchandise. The first day I actually had people that I spoke to that actually live here in Pennsylvania, and they were down there on October 1st. They said it was just a merchandise gala. That's all it was. Well, 7 hours to get into the Emporium.
Look at the survey here. 4 questions are on merch. So even they would acknowledge privately, at least, that that merchandise played a huge role in this. And I will say, some of that's supply chain issues, right? In terms of the availability of merch, right? They ran out of bags for the lightsabers at Galaxy's Edge. I mean, they're having supply chain issues all over the place. From what I understand, they're also having supply chain issues when it comes to like fireworks shells, which is why they might be testing for other alternative shells that they can actually get their hands on, because they just can't get what they need to put on these big productions here. So it's quite fascinating how the company is having to kind of pivot on this. But I agree with you, George. I mean, they really kind of went in hard on the things that really people don't really give two craps about, really, and didn't go in hard enough on the things that people really do find important when it comes to a 50th anniversary celebration or whatever kind of celebration that you're having for the parks. Where's nostalgia? Where's the classic Disney? The company even acknowledges that the nightly fireworks show didn't incorporate the 50th anniversary. One of the big sticking points with a lot of fans. So I just look at this and go ahead.
It's crazy, right? Well, here's the thing too. It's like, look, Chapek says he's a data guy. Okay. Look at the data, Chapek. Look at the data as to what sells at Walt Disney World Resort. This guy right here. Oh, you can't even see him. Here, I'll bring him over. This guy right here. Right?
Yeah.
The Orange Bird. This is very classic Walt Disney World. Very, very classic Walt Disney World. And it sells like that. You have so much at Walt Disney World. It's maybe not as nostalgic as Disneyland Resort, but it has a lot of elements in it that would really do well if you were to lean in on that nostalgia, and they don't. Instead of leaning in on Walt Disney World's 50th and the nostalgia of that resort, they're leaning into like this generic sort of Disney magic pixie dust celebration, and it's boring. It's corporate. Do the Orange Bird stuff. Do Figment stuff. Do more of the stuff that makes Walt Disney World, and stop just being a generic Disney celebration.
It's so frustrating. It is so frustrating. Let's see if I got a drop for this one. Here we go.
But it begs the damn question: what the hell's going on?
Why? And they took so long to prepare for this. I mean, I was hearing about 50th anniversary back in like 2016. I want to say. I mean, it was in the works.
Yeah, this was like building up for almost a decade.
And to have it be such a dud I mean, I think it really speaks volumes. And unfortunately, early in the show, we mentioned how people were still going to the parks, right? They were still,
Right.
they were still packing the place out. But I mean, the bad will generated from all of this, I think, is also something that isn't being talked about right now. Because, I mean, let's face it. When you go home and tell your family or friends about your Walt Disney World vacation, if it's really good, you might tell 3 people. It's really bad, you might tell 10 people or more. Right? That the bad will generated from all this, the company's seemingly oblivious until it's at a point where they can't ignore it anymore, and how reactive they are afterwards.
Yeah.
It is really frustrating, and I think the 50th anniversary kind of epitomizes that in a lot of ways.
Yep. 100%.
And that's just like a core fact of who's sitting right next to me. When we go to Disney, we're going together as a family. We want to have an experience that the whole family, we're not going down there to purchase this holy grail exclusive merchandise that everyone wants to get their hands on and fight over and make a cast member cry over a 50th tumbler. It's like, we want to go down there for the memories. We want to go down there for what the core of what Disney stands for, and I'm the Disney family man, so I should know. So
yeah, no,
Right.
100%, man, 100%. They missed the boat on the 50th. They really did. And I get it. The Pandy came right at the worst time for that. I understand that. I'm sure it would have been much more impressive if the Pandy didn't hit when the Pandy hit. But they did miss the boat. And I'm hoping that Walt Disney World's 60th is a much better, more impressive situation.
Hopefully, and I would have used what I would have done probably was kind of pivot towards the company's 100th anniversary and kind of make
Right.
it like, hey, let's do this again over, and kind of let this celebration kind of bleed into that, and really kind of do the things that maybe you were gonna do for the 50th anniversary that got cut or you couldn't do. And kind of make it a pseudo 50th 2.0, so to speak, right? And I don't think they're going in that direction. That's a real shame, because I think there were a lot of opportunities here that were missed, and I guess we'll have to revisit them in another decade, which is heartbreaking, because Walt Disney World really deserved better.
They did. 100%.
And that's what I thought too. I thought, like, with Disneyland's 50th and then their 60th, and I thought, I could imagine what Walt Disney World is going to be. And it's like, Disneyland, I mean, for the 50th,
That was a big
you
deal.
had that, all those, those murals around Disneyland that had like the special moments. Like,
Yes, so they collected people's images
Yes.
from throughout the years and kind of assembled
Yeah.
them in these kind of collages and so forth. Amazing stuff.
and then for Disneyland 60th, we got Disneyland Forever. And it's
Right.
like one of the best fireworks show. And then it's like that build up anticipation. Well, what are we going to get at Walt Disney World's 50th? Oh, well, we got a little thing called Kite Tails. So
Yeah.
It's really sad how the nighttime spectaculars that they hyped up to the nth degree, nobody really talks about, but people talk about the beacons of light on Epcot, on
Right.
Spaceship Earth, even still to this day, and it's like, it really is a shame.
Well, and Dre, and that's the thing, and I've been saying this for a long time. When it comes to nighttime shows, simplicity is king. Like, some of the best parts of World of Color are the parts that don't really have a lot of bells and whistles. Like, I love that Little Mermaid segment where you just hear the Little Mermaid theme and it's just blue fountains just doing this. It's all it is. It's the best part of the show because it's just simple. It's just music. It's like in fireworks, same thing. It's just Disney music and fireworks. Harmonious does too much. It's got these big Transformers, Optimus Prime things sitting in the lagoon. It's doing too much. You don't need all that. Like, just play music, have pretty water, lights, you're good. Like, you just try. They need to stop trying so hard with this tech and just be more, just come back down to what makes these shows special in the first place,
Yeah.
And they have to stop with the repetitive of like using the same format of songs and characters. We get it. All you're doing is you're just taking the same characters, you're taking the same songs, and you're changing the title. That's basically what you're doing.
They repeat franchises a lot, and it's so annoying. Like it's like the same. Like if I had to hear Jungle Book, if I had to hear that song one more time, I mean, he just rolls it out everywhere. I mean, look at what Shanghai's doing, where they're bringing out so many of those different franchises and incorporating it in as part of their celebration for their fifth anniversary. I mean, that was really, really stunning. I understand that Walt Disney World's limited in some of that, but it's like, come on. I mean, you have all these franchises. You have 100 years of the company's history when it comes to animation and studio output and so forth. How about we use it and not just the same ones over and over again?
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Well, I'm very glad that you had brought this topic up, Dre. It was fascinating because I've been wanting to mention it to you guys too about the Orlando International Airport removing the 50th decor, and this was a perfect prime example with that survey that even Disney is now noticing some hinges off of the 50th. So I'm very glad that you both got to join me today on this Citrus Corner recording. We dug into a lot. We talked about Disney Hollywood Studios on expansion. We talked about the terms between Imagineers, either, with the yin and yang, either going back and forth to California and Florida. And then, of course, we talked about the unexpected survey for Walt Disney World's 50th. And so I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. And everyone who has listened and watched, please comment down below. Tell us what you think. Do you agree with all our notions? Do you disagree? We listen to them all. We hear them all. We love talking about it. So we want to hear from you. And again, another shout out to Disney Space Pod for the beginning conversation of this recording. It means a lot, and thank you for the idea. And so I'm going to start with you, Mr. Freshly Squeezed. Where could everyone find you at home?
Best place to find me is on Twitter at VashSky. It's right down there. I love the interactions, love the comments, love the DMs. It really is fascinating what you guys have to say. And hey, I'm true to my word. I'm incorporating a lot of your stuff into the shows. I mean, you really, the sense of community there is really phenomenal. So thank you for reaching out. And to see me, well, it's on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Code 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove right there. I guess if we have the ticker tape right there, we'll play it.
But really nothing compares with a freshly squeezed.
Yeah, I love that drop. So that's where you can find me.
Yes.
Awesome. And then, of course, we have the master of the channel, Mr. Orange Grove 55. And of course, he doesn't need an introduction because you're practically watching him right now. So if you're on the channel.
Exactly. And where can you find me? Well, you can find me right here.
So subscribe below so you can see more of this guy right here. Yeah,
exactly.
And then, of course, I'm George, Mr. Disney Family Man 23, which that's also my YouTube and Instagram. You could contact me on Twitter at Disney George. I love hearing from you guys. Love the conversations. Love the healthy debates. We may not agree with it all, but you know what? That's what a nice, healthy conversation is. So, everyone.
George, I got to say, that was really toxic of you to say that, man. Healthy debates? What's wrong with you, man?
Yeah, we only allow people on this show who absolutely 100% agree with us, and we only invite that kind of conversation. You should know better, George. You should know better.
So I have to say, folks, after this recording, the three of us are going to have a nice little talk. So So on that note, folks, it's all in good fun. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, and we'll see you next time.